I'm good. Recording okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So, cars, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, by the way, you have a really good score. It's
Yeah, I'm actually so about my score. I'm really satisfied with my score. Because with my background, I'm non-traditional. I did not do any science. Well, I did geography. Well, my degree is in science, but it's more like non-sciencey, I guess.
well, I
So
mean,
I had to
wait, sorry. Go on.
so basically I had to take everything like as electives outside of my major. So I wasn't like a yeah. And then I'm currently doing my master's degree too. So
What are you doing your master's in?
I'm in environmental and occupational hygiene.
Yeah.
So it's like a little bit of air pollution research, and also I do like research in the occupational field, like construction work and like things like
And
that.
the effects of environmental
Yeah,
effects on them.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's really cool.
Yeah. So
Um, yeah,
during school, I'm actually really satisfied with the score, and I think it's not bad for the
it's really
school that
good.
I want to apply to.
Yeah.
I'm not looking to get 100 on this,
Uh-huh.
um, but it's just the cars part is just way beyond like
Yeah, it's a lot trickier than any other critical reading section for any other exam because I've like done all the other ones, and this one is definitely the trickiest.
yeah.
But at a certain point, it'll click.
Yeah, I mean, I've just tried a lot of different methods of doing cars. Like
Yeah,
even though I'm Canadian, like I've taken the SAT before too. And like
yeah,
the
yeah,
reading,
yeah.
it's always been like my biggest issue ever. Like I just
Oh, okay.
never
Yeah.
understood like I mean, so I've tried like different methods. So like there's
Hmm.
ones that where I will look at the question first and then read the passage, and like
Yeah.
I've just tried all of it. And it
Okay.
just doesn't, so I
Okay.
don't know.
So normally I use OneNote. Um, so I can make like a shared OneNote um notebook for us to both use.
Okay, sounds good.
Familiar with that?
Yeah, I use it too.
Okay, okay. Yes. Okay, so we can use that. And okay, I see some of the passages that you have sent me.
Hmm.
All right. So overall, uh what I guess the trick is, if there is one, is to be able to like decipher what matters,
Yeah.
like cutting the wheat from the chaff, like most of it is just fluff, but you're
Hmm.
gonna look for the sentences um, that indicate that tell you something, that give you some kind of idea as to like what the author's perspective is.
Yeah.
So all right, so let's start with this one that's about formalism.
Hmm.
Okay, I have it in front of me. Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. um So I'll go like, I like to kind of like spend more time on fewer things
Hmm.
than just doing a lot of things and spending less time on it. Because, the idea behind that is that if you truly understand why why the answer is the answer and why every other choice is not, then, you'll see everything like your score pretty much rise exponentially.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start slow with this one.
Okay.
Uh, so okay, in the first place, to make a poem or the novel the central concern of literary criticism, has appeared to mean cutting it loose from its author and from the author's particular hopes, fears, interests, conflicts, etc. Criticism so limited may seem bloodless and hollow. Tell me about that.
So that just is an introduction to what literary criticism is, and basically it's saying that it means to detach it from what the author is, like author's intention is behind it.
Good. And if you do that, what's left?
What do you mean?
So like, if you write a poem or an essay and you completely divorce it from the author, all that's left are the words, right?
Right.
So the form, the structure, right? Okay, then in the second place, to emphasize the work seems to involve severing it from those who actually read it, and this severance may seem drastic and therefore disastrous. After all, literature is written to be read. So this is just saying, so in the first place, like literary criticism means that we divorce it from the author's intentions. In the second place, which is going to be, in contrast to that, is that if we do that thing in the first place, like cutting it away from the author's intentions and like the person who wrote it, it could be a bad thing because literature is meant to be read.
Yeah.
Anyway, usually those first two paragraphs aren't going to be very useful to us, but they just kind of set the stage.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you why it's not going to be useful for us, because it doesn't really tell us much about what the author's perspective is.
Like the author wrote this piece?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So, yeah, I guess I should clarify that. I'm good. Since we're talking about literary criticism, which involves literature, which is written by authors, but we're talking about the author of the particular
Cars, right?
passage.
Yeah. Okay.
So those first
by the
two
way, you have a really good
I mean,
score.
the first two passages. And it's
Yeah,
good to read in terms
I'm
of,
actually about my score. I'm really satisfied with my score.
in terms
because
to
so
read
with
in
my
terms of
background, I'm
paragraphs.
non-traditional. I did not do
So,
any science. Well,
like,
I did
kind of
geography.
like how when you first learn how
well,
to
my
read, you
degree is in
learn
science, but it's
the
more
sound
like
a letter makes.
non-sciencey,
And then
I guess.
when you try
So
to
I had to.
read a word, you sound it out by going by
So
the
basically, I
letters.
had to take everything like
And then after that, you
as
go
electives
and you chunk
outside of
it
my
into
major.
sentences.
So I wasn't like a.
I want us
and then
to
I'm
be at
currently
a
doing
point
my
where we can
master's
chunk it
degree
into
too.
paragraphs.
So
Where are you doing your master's in? Okay.
So
we're gonna
I'm
go
in
like think of
environmental and
like
occupational
any passage
hygiene.
like this.
Yeah.
In terms
So it's
of
like
paragraphs.
A little bit
And
of air
be
pollution
aware
research,
of like
and also I
where
do
certain
like
things are,
research in the occupational
which
field, like
will, it'll take
construction
time, but
work and like
we'll get there.
things like that.
And the effects of
So now
like
we're talking
environmental
about
effects on
certain
them.
things. So
Yeah, exactly.
the
Okay,
formalist
that's really cool.
critic.
Yeah.
So I would just like highlight formalist over there.
Well, I'm actually really satisfied with
And,
the
like,
score, and it's
When you
I think
highlight,
it's not bad for
I like
the
to
school that
like double click
for
on
the
the
school
word.
that I want to apply
and
to.
I have like
I'm not
my,
looking to get
like hands
100 on this.
Alt H button.
But it's
Do
just
you like doing that?
yeah, the cars part is just way beyond like
Yeah,
it's a lot.
So the formalist critic,
it's
so
a
right
lot
away.
trickier than
So we're talking about
any other
literary
reading
criticism.
section
That's what the first two
or
paragraphs
any
say,
other
which isn't
exam,
saying much.
because
But for the first time, we're talking
all
about
the other
specific
ones,
type
and this one is definitely the
of
trickiest.
literary criticism, but one that is called. But at a certain point, it'll click.
Yeah, I mean, I've
So
just tried a lot of different methods of doing cars.
Anyone that poems and plays and
like
novels
even though I'm Canadian, like I've taken the SAT before too, and like the reading,
and are written.
it's always been like
sorts
my
of
biggest
motives,
issue ever. Like
the
I just
money
never
from desire to
understood,
express
like,
oneself.
I mean, so I've tried like
for
different
the sake
methods.
of a
So like
cause,
there's
etc.
ones that where I will look at the question
We don't
first
need
and then
any
read the
of that stuff.
passage and like
Mostly
I've just tried all of it.
it says
it
etc.
just doesn't. So I
Okay,
don't know.
so
we don't really
normally
need to know those
OneNote.
specifics.
The words
So I can make like a
shared
highlight
OneNote
and pay attention to are
kind of like
contrast
notebook,
words or just
for us
things
to
like
both use.
So okay, then it says moreover, right? Which just means
Okay,
in
sounds good.
addition
Familiar
to.
with that?
So it's just going
Yeah,
to say
I use it
like
too.
another
Okay,
thing
okay.
that's in line with that
Okay,
same
so we can
reasoning.
Okay,
of,
so we can use
of,
that
of what the formalist critic knows.
and okay,
I
so
see some
moreover,
of the
the
passages
formalist
that
critic
you
knows as
sent
well
me.
as anyone that literary works are
Mhm.
merely potential until they are read.
All right. So
That
overall,
is, they are recreated in the minds of actual readers.
what
Vary
I
enormously in
guess
their
the trick is,
capabilities.
if there is one,
in their
is
capabilities,
to,
their interests, their prejudices,
be able to like
prejudices, I guess,
decipher
their,
what
ideas
matters,
etc.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't say
Cutting
etc.,
the-
but I'm saying
the
etc.
meat from the chaff.
Like most of
because
it
it's still
is
stuff that
just
we're not
fluff,
really that interested
but
in.
you're gonna look for
The words I
sentences
want you to
that,
look for are the contrast words.
So see that but that indicate.
Yeah.
So I would highlight that tell you something, that
Mhm.
give you some
the
kind of
but
idea as to
the
like,
formalist
what
critic
the
is
author's
concerned
perspective
primarily
is
with the work itself.
So I would actually.
All right,
So
let's
it's good that you
start
highlighted
with
that. That's
this
what I would
one that's
highlight.
about
I would highlight the
formalism.
but part and always look
Mhm.
for those words. Look
Okay,
for
I have it in
but,
front of me. Do you?
However,
Okay.
because they indicate a contrast.
So I'll go like,
right?
Mhm.
I like to kind of like
that's a very
spend more
important
time
things
on
right there.
fewer
Formalist
things.
critic is concerned with the work itself.
Mhm.
Than just
So
doing
everything
a lot
that came
of
before
things and
is
spending less
saying,
time on it.
while it's true that the formalist critic
Because,
takes into consideration
the idea behind that
the
is
author's
that if you
intentions
truly
and
understand
blah, blah, blah,
why
blah,
why the answer is the answer and why every
the
other
formalist critic
choice
is concerned
is not,
primarily, right?
then that means like mostly you'll see like, with the work
everything
itself, like your score pretty much
Right.
rise exponentially.
So
Yeah.
let me ask you this: in
so,
terms of the first two paragraphs, which
so
is
I'll
the
start slow
formalist
with this
critic
one.
more
Okay.
more like. So okay. In the first place, to
Cutting
make a
it loose
poem
from the
or the
author.
novel the central concern of literary criticism.
So now we know what
has
a formalist
appeared to
critic is,
mean,
right?
cutting it loose from its
Okay.
author.
So
and
then they
from
say
the author's particular
and by the way,
hopes,
if you ever
fears,
see a
interests,
word you don't know,
conflicts,
just ask
etc.
me.
Criticism
Okay.
so limited may seem
That's just a good
bloodless and
thing
hollow.
to do in general. If you ever see
Tell
a
me
word,
about that.
So
Like
and that just
yeah.
is introduction
Sometimes there's like
to
words
what
in the
literary
passage that I don't know,
criticism
and they
is,
ask
and
about
basically it's
it
saying
in the
that
question. I'm
it
like,
means
I don't know.
to
Oh, yeah,
detach it from
I mean,
what the author is.
I'm sure you can figure
like,
it out from the context.
author's intention is behind it.
Good, because it matters. Because and if you do that, because
what's
it
left?
says speculation, right?
What do you mean?
And so like if
What to
you
you
write
is speculation?
a poem or an essay
Speculation.
and you completely divorce
just
it
kind of
from
guessing
the author,
and-
Yeah.
all that's left
Good.
are the
So-
words, right?
Yeah, because certain words have connotations and
The
form.
authors use particular words
The
for a
structure.
reason, right?
Right.
I mean, I've had so many like
So
whatever students like.
then in the second place,
ask me like, why don't they just say
emphasize
that?
the work?
Seems
But
to involve
they don't just
severing
like
it.
if I say like
severing it
speculation,
from
it's
those
like
who actually
guessing.
read it.
Sometimes students
And
say
this
like, why don't they
severing
just say
may seem
guessing?
drastic, and
But it's
therefore
because of
disastrous.
a particular.
After all, literature is written to
connotation.
be read. Like speculation, you would
So,
see like speculating
This is
like
just
the stock
saying.
price or
So in the first
things like
place,
that. Because it's not like
literary
it's not
criticism
exactly the
means that
same
we
as
divorce
guessing.
it from the
But anyway,
author's intentions.
speculation on the
And the
mental
second
processes
place,
that the author
which
takes,
is going to be
that's of the author takes the critic away from the work.
If we do that
into,
thing in the first place,
biography
like
and
psychology,
cutting it away from the
So-
author's intentions and
So
if we're
Like,
concerned
the person
with
who
just
wrote
the
it,
work itself, it could be a bad thing
will
because
stray-
we will not go
literature is
into
meant
the
to be read.
dimensions of
Yeah.
the mental processes because then
Anyway,
that becomes less.
usually
of
those
this
first two
formalist
paragraphs
literary
aren't going to be
criticism
very useful
and more
to
into
us,
something that's within
but
the
they just kind of
context
set the stage.
biography or
And
psychology.
I'll tell you
right?
why it's not going to be useful
Yeah.
for us. such
studies
doesn't really
describe the
tell us
process of
much about
composition,
what the
but not
author's
the structure of the
perspective
thing
is.
composed. So, what does that
like the author
say to you?
wrote this piece?
That's saying to me that
Yeah.
the studies that are more geography
Okay.
and psychology deals
Yes.
with the process
So,
of writing it, but not
yeah,
the
I guess I
structure,
should
which is
clarify
what
that.
the formula is.
Since we're talking about
is
literary
doing.
criticism, which
the
involves
process of writing
literature,
it,
which is
written
meaning
by authors,
like
but we're talking about
the
the author of the particular
mental like
parts of
Okay,
why
so
someone would write it.
those first two sentences, I mean the first two passages,
And it's good to read
on
in
the other
terms
hand,
of, sorry, paragraphs.
so that's another
It's
kind
good
of contrast
in
word
terms
that I would highlight.
to read in terms of paragraphs.
Right. Wow, I like these words. Wow.
So
Wait,
you
what's
know, like
No,
kind of
I
like
was
how
just
when
saying
you
that I
first
never
learn how
thought
to
of
read, you
highlight
learn the
words.
sound
Like I know they're
the
important.
letter
but
makes.
Oh yeah,
And
because
then
it's telling you, it's almost
read
like
a word, you
it's
sound
telling you
it out by
something,
going
and it just
by the
keeps
letters.
saying that same thing.
And then after
you
that,
get
you
the point,
go
and
you
then it
chunk
tells
it
you
into sentences.
But
And then
I want
it's
us to be at a point where we can
Right.
chunk it into
so
paragraphs.
so
Mhm.
everything that's
Before that, but
so
is the
we're
same.
gonna go like
everything,
think of
or rather, the thing
like
that's
any
after is
passage
different,
like this.
in terms
So
of paragraphs.
it's easier to
And
be
it's
aware
of where
if you have to
certain
memorize
things
the
are,
alphabet,
it's easier to
which will it'll take time.
smart
but
way to do it is
we'll
to
get there.
memorize the
All right. So
or wait,
now
if you wanted to
we're talking
memorize certain
about,
things,
I would just say like it's easier to
So,
memorize the vowels
the formalist
because
critic,
everything then
so
because
I
there are
would
fewer
just
vowels.
highlight formalists
Everything
over
is,
there.
that's not a vowel is a consonant,
And like
instead of
when you
memorizing
highlight,
it all,
like
so if
I
you
like
memorize,
to so if you
double
were
click
to
on the
read this
word
and you know the not
and
part,
the contrast
I
stuff,
have like my
you know that
everything like
everything
hands
else is
on the Alt H button
along
the lines of what
Do you
it's
like doing
saying
that?
before.
Yeah, I do that.
Yeah.
So
Which
anyway,
is,
on the other hand,
speed,
exploration of the various
Okay,
readings.
so the
which
formalist
work
critic,
has
so
received
right away,
also takes the critic.
so we're talking
away
about
from the work into
literary
typology
criticism. That's what the
and
first
the
two
history of
paragraphs say,
taste.
which isn't saying much.
So that's
for the
really,
first time we're talking
just
about a
saying
specific type of literary criticism. It's just
another
one that is called
pretty much
formalist.
it's another example of
Mhm.
taking it away from the
Okay,
structure.
so they're saying that the formalist critic knows as
What
well
does
as
it
anyone
mean
that poems
by
and plays and novels are written as expressions
various readings that the
of
work
particular
receives?
personalities and are written
Oh,
all sorts
so
of
basically, like,
motives for money,
if you
for
are a
desire to
literary
express
critic and
oneself,
you're trying to
for the sake of a cause,
etc.
examine or
We
do
don't
some
need
work
any of that stuff.
on
Mostly because
like,
it says etc.
critiquing some form of
Mhm.
literature.
So
You
we don't
can
really need to
read
know those
other
specifics.
people's critiques.
Okay.
The words to
Okay.
various
Highlight
readings
and
which
pay
the work
attention
is
to
received
are
so like other people who have read
kind
it
of like
and
contrast
what their
words
takes are
or
on
just
it.
things like
Okay.
So okay, then it says moreover, right?
So-
Which just means in addition to.
that
So
takes
it's just going
it
away from the
say,
form
like,
and it goes into
another thing
like,
that's in line
again,
with that
like
same,
psychology
reasoning
and the history of taste, which
of
is
what the formalist
just,
critic knows,
how other
So,
people have
moreover,
viewed
the
it.
formalist critic knows as well as anyone that
And then it
literary
says,
works are merely
but
potential
such
until
works
they are
are
read.
read.
I would look at the word
That
but.
is, they are recreated in the minds
such
of actual
work,
readers,
who vary enormously
looking
in
into
their
the readings and stuff like that.
capabilities. Valuable and
their
necessary as it
capabilities,
may
their
be,
interests,
is to
their
be distinguished
prejudices,
from the criticism of the work itself.
prejudices, I guess, their
Ideas,
almost
etc.
like,
Right?
if you want to think
It
about
doesn't
it
say
as
etc.,
like
but
a
I'm saying
movie,
etc.
you want to be
because
a
it's
very
still stuff that we're
like
not
a
really that
formalist
interested
critic
in.
for a movie.
The words I want you to look for are the contrast words. So any
read
that other
but-
people's reviews,
Yeah.
it takes away
So,
from
I would highlight that.
your own criticism of
So it
the
says,
movie itself.
But the
make
formalist
sense?
critic
Yeah.
is concerned primarily with the work itself.
Okay.
So
now
I would actually,
it's
so
going
it's
to
good that you
actually
highlighted that.
define.
That's what I would highlight. I would highlight
some
the
stuff
but
for us,
part and
so
always
this is
look
good
for those
to
words.
know.
Look
It's
for
good that
but,
you highlighted the one and the two.
however, they
because
indicate a contrast.
You don't want to highlight too much,
right?
You just want to highlight what
So
will help
that's
you go back
a
and
very
find the thing that you're
important
looking
sentence
for.
right there.
Formalist critic,
So
is concerned with the
smart
work
for you to
itself.
highlight the one instead of everything
So
else.
everything that
after
came
it.
before
So you
is
can
saying
go back. So good
while
job on
it's
that. So
true that
one,
the formalist critic takes
okay,
into
so the formalist critic
consideration
makes two assumptions. One,
the author's
that the relevant
intentions
part of the
and
author's
blah, 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 blah,
intention
blah, blah, blah,
is what the author actually put into the work. That is the critic
formalist
critic
assumes
is concerned
that
primarily,
intention
right?
as realized is the intention that
means like mostly like
that's pretty
with the work
abstract.
itself.
Right.
So
Let me ask you this:
in terms of the first two
So,
paragraphs,
I think
which
what that
is a
sentence means
formalist
is
critic
that
more?
author's
more like-
intention is whatever is written down. So
Yeah.
whatever's not cutting it loose from the author. You can't assume.
Perfect.
Good. So now we know what
It's,
a formalist critic is.
Another
right?
word for that is like de facto.
Okay. So then they say,
And by the way, if you ever see a word you don't know, just ask me.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
like-
just a good thing
like
to
de
do in
facto,
general.
if you ever see a
de
word,
jure, like de jure is like what? Like,
And-
yeah.
Sometimes
a
there's like
law
words
might
in the
state.
passage that I don't know, and they ask about it in the question.
And
I'm
then
like,
de facto is like,
Oh, yeah.
Is
I mean,
actually the fact. I'm sure you can figure it out from the context. So
okay. So, but good
because
you
it
understand that.
matters because
Okay, and two,
the formalist critic
speculation,
assumes
right?
an ideal reader. That is,
Instead
and
of focusing on the varying spectrum
what
of
to you
possible
is speculation,
readings,
aka interpretations.
speculation.
The critic attempts to find
Just
a
kind of
central point
guessing
of reference
and-
yeah. From which to
Good.
focus
Okay,
on the
so-
structure of the poem or novel.
Yeah, because certain words have connotations, and authors use particular words for a reason. So right, like
yeah,
I mean,
so-
I've had so many like whatever students
you know,
like
it's
worded in a way that
ask me,
makes
like,
it
why don't
tough
they just say that?
by saying ideal
But
reader.
they don't just,
and
like, if
stuff
I say, like,
that,
speculation,
but it's like guessing.
ultimately,
Sometimes
what does it
students
say? Like, why don't they just say guessing?
But it's because of a particular
That
connotation.
yeah.
Like
So
speculation.
formalist,
You would
assumes
see,
the
like,
ideal reader.
speculating like a stock price.
Oh yeah,
or
forget the ideal reader stuff.
things like that.
Less
It's
important,
not
but
particular.
it's not
mostly,
exactly the
like
same as
mostly what is he
guessing.
trying to
But
say?
anyway, speculation on the mental processes that the author takes.
I just
no,
thought
that's
it
of
was
the
trying
author
to say
takes
that
the
the
critic
ideal
away
reader
from the work
Is what the
into
critic assumes.
biography and
So what would
psychology.
the ideal reader be?
So
But it's
So,
very,
if we're
I don't know, it's hard
concerned
to
with just
interpret.
the work
but I
itself,
think an ideal reader is somebody that
we will stray. We will
understands
not
the
go
text
into
and
the
probably-
dimensions of the mental
Perfect.
processes,
Understands
because then
text
that
as
becomes
is, right?
less of this formalist
Instead of
literary
saying like
criticism
my
and
personal
more into
interpretation
something
is
that's within the
this,
context of
X, Y, and Z.
biography
It's
or
saying like
psychology, right?
this is literally what it
Um,
says, and therefore
Such
that's
studies
what it is.
describe the process of
Right.
composition,
Okay.
not the structure
Um,
of the thing composed. So,
okay.
what does that
Then it
sentence
says-
say to you?
So the reason
That's
the
saying to
ideal
me
reader
that,
part, it kind of like is meant to
the
like kind of throw
studies
you off,
that are
because
more
then they say
geography
there is no
and
ideal
psychology
reader, of
deals with
course,
the process of writing it,
but
but
for the
not the
purpose
structure,
of focusing
which
on
is
the
what the
poem
formalist
rather than
is
on
Yeah.
the critic's
So the
own
process of writing
reactions,
it is a
meaning,
defensible strategy.
like the alternatives are
Mental,
desperate.
like,
Either we say that
parts
one
of
person's
why
reading is as good as
someone would write.
another's,
Mhm.
or and thus
Um,
deny the possibility of any
On the other
standard
hand,
reading. Or else we take
so
the
that's
lowest
another
common
kind of
denominator
contrast
of
word
the
that I
various
would
readings
highlight.
that have been made.
Right.
That is,
Wow,
we
I
frankly
like
move
these
from
words a
literary
lot.
criticism
Wait,
into
yep,
social
what's that?
psychology.
No, I was just saying that I never thought of
Sorry, that's kind of saying a
Highlight
lot.
word.
What do you take from
like
that?
I know they're important. No, I'm kind of lost.
Oh yeah.
Because
in the
it-
words.
it's telling you,
Yeah.
it's
But,
almost like
I want to
it's
hear
telling you
what
something, and it
what
just
you
keeps
think, even if
saying
you're
that
lost.
same thing, and you get
Or
the
believe
point,
lost.
and then
Oh
it
my
tells
gosh.
you, but, and then it's different.
Right. Oh, so it's saying that it's
so
trying
everything
to
that's before that but is the same.
present, like,
everything,
a
or
way
rather, the
to
thing that's after is different.
deal with the idea of there's no
So
ideal reader. So we
It's
can
easier to.
either
It's like, yep.
we can
If you have to
that
memorize the
everybody
alphabet,
has the
it's
same
easier
reading
to.
capabilities, or that we just
Smart
go
way
with
to
the
do it
person
is to
that
memorize the.
sucks at reading the most.
Yeah.
Or wait,
There, exactly.
If you wanted to
See?
memorize, so I would just say like
Yeah.
it's easier to memorize the vowels.
Trust
yourself more often than not, because everything then because there are
Okay.
fewer vowels. Everything
Alright.
that's not
So,
a
yeah,
vowel is
that's
a consonant.
exactly it.
Instead of memorizing it all,
Okay.
And the problem
So
with
if you
that is
memorize-
that
so if you
again
read
this and you know
so you're
the
kind of seeing a
not
pattern
part,
here,
the contrast stuff,
everything that they're
you know
saying,
that
it's like
if we do it this way, we're no longer doing literary criticism. We're doing this.
before.
Like it before
So
they
anyway,
said
on
that
the
it's
other
like
hand,
biology,
exploration
before
of
they
the
said it
various
was like
readings,
psychology,
which the
before
work
that
is
they said
received,
it was,
also takes the critic away from the work into
social
psychology.
now they're saying
and
it's
the history
social
of taste.
psychology, right?
So that's
but
really,
we want it to be just literary
that,
criticism.
Right.
So it's just
another.
So yeah,
Just
pretty much
if
they
they another
like,
example of taking
as
it
you
away
read this, you
from
want to
the
get like a
structure.
vibe of like the author. So
What
the
does
author
it
is a
mean
very
by
strict, is very strict
various
on
readings that the work received?
what his or her
So
are
basically,
on
like,
what literary criticism is.
if you are a literary critic and you're trying to
propose taking a consensus of the
examine
opinions of
or
qualified readers,
do
this
some
just
work
keeps going
on
more into
what it
like
said before,
critiquing some form of
Mhm.
literature. It's kind of just
you can read other
saying
people's
more
critiques
of the same thing,
Okay.
kind of. Like
Okay.
so,
various readings, which
and it's
the work
it's
is
there for a
received.
reason.
So
To
like other people who have
throw
read
you
it
off and to
and
make
what their
you
takes are
be
on
like,
it.
okay, now I have to
Mhm.
understand this, and
But it's just
So-
saying the same stuff.
yeah,
Because that
and
takes
you
it
can
away
kind
from
of
the
tell
form,
and
because
it
there's
goes
no
into
contrast.
like again like psychology
Yeah.
and the
It just
history
goes
of
more
taste, which is
into
just
why the thing
how
that they
other
said
people
would
have
have
viewed
worked.
it. And then it says,
Yeah, I
such
agree.
work.
Because
So again,
sometimes
I would
if
look
there's
at
no
the word
transition
but.
word, then I'm not sure what kind
such
of
work,
point they're
you know,
trying to make.
Yeah,
looking into the
basically,
readings and stuff like that.
it's
valuable and
the point- it's a
necessary
point
as
that's
it
already
may
been
be,
made, is to be distinguished from the criticism
elaborated
of the work
on.
itself.
So
it would only matter
So,
if they ask you about it.
almost like if
Okay.
you want to think about it as like a movie and you want
in which case it's,
to be
you
a
know,
very
easy. You could just go
like
back
a
to it.
formalist critic for a movie, but just the fact that you understood it from
Any
the
read
first
other people's reviews,
part of that paragraph is
it
enough.
takes away from
Okay.
your
And
own
last
criticism of
paragraph:
of
a
the
literary
movie
work is a
itself.
document, and as a document can
Does that
be
make sense?
analyzed in terms of the
makes
forces
sense.
that have produced it,
Or it may be manipulated as a force
now
in its own
it's
right.
going to actually
Mirrors the
define
past, it may
like,
influence the
some stuff
future.
for us. So this is
These
good
fact-
to know. and
these
it's good that
facts,
you highlighted
it
the
would
one
be
and the two. Futile to deny.
You,
And I know
you
no
don't
critic
want to highlight
who
too
does
much.
deny them.
You just want to highlight
What
But-
will help you go
wait, what?
back and
Yeah,
find
thank
the
you.
thing that you're looking
I
for.
just, it's
Huh?
very
So
convoluted.
it's smart for you to highlight
Yeah.
for one
They're
instead of everything
designed
else after it.
designed to be
That
that
you
way.
can go back. So good job on that. So
One,
but you
okay,
see
so
that
the
formalist
but-
critic makes two
Mhm.
assumptions. One,
that's the
that the
important part.
relevant part of the author's intention
So it says,
is what
but
the author
the reduction of a work
into the
of
work.
literature,
That is, the critic
to its
assumes
causes does
that
not
the author's
constitute
intention
literary
as
criticism,
realized is the intention
nor
that
does
counts.
it estimate, nor
That's pretty
is an
abstract.
estimate of its effects. So everything that came before is just saying, yeah, of course
do you
we can
think
do
that
this
might
with a literary work,
So,
blah blah blah,
I think
which
what
they've
that
said many
sentence
times
means
before
is
in this
that
passage.
Um,
But
author's
that
intention is
not
whatever is
literary
written down.
criticism.
So
Yeah,
whatever's not
literary
written
criticism
down,
is
you
a very
can't.
specific thing.
Perfect.
Good.
It's
And
another word for that is like
what
de
the
facto.
author cares about.
You know what I
And
mean?
what does the reduction of
Okay.
mean?
Just
yeah.
basically,
Like,
if you take a
There's
literary
like de
work
facto and
you
de
reduce
jure.
it, like de jure is
its
like what
causes,
aka like a law might state, the psychology or of the person who wrote it, or
and then
the
de facto is like
social
what is
psychology of the
actually, like, the
situation around it.
So
I mean, like,
okay. So but
let me think of
good.
example.
You understand
like,
that?
whatever.
Okay, and then
I don't
two, the formalist critic
Something
assumes
like,
an ideal reader. That is
Uncle Tom's
instead of
Cabin.
focusing on the varying spectrum of possible
So
meanings.
Uncle Tom's
aka
Cabin has
interpretations,
like
the
there's
critic
there's
attempts to find
causes
a central point of reference
that
in which to
contributed
focus on the
to
structure of the poem. Or
somebody writing Uncle Tom's Cabin, right? Like slavery, abolitionist movement,
so
all those things.
yeah.
But if you reduce
worded
that
in a way
work
that makes it tough
just to
by
those,
saying ideal
just to
reader
those,
and
things like that,
pauses.
ultimately,
That's not
well, yeah.
literary
What is it saying
criticism.
ultimately? I think you
Right.
like
That-
if you took
yeah,
if you
so
wanted to do
formalist,
if you wanted to do
assumes that ideal
literary
reader.
criticism on Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Oh yeah, forget the ideal reader.
You know what I mean
stuff,
by that, Phil?
less important, but
do
Mostly,
what do you mean?
like
Tom's
mostly,
Cabin?
what is it trying to say?
The book?
Yeah.
Is it-
do you know which book I'm talking about?
I just thought
No,
it
I've
was
never read it.
trying
Oh,
to say
okay,
that
okay.
the ideal reader is
I don't know.
what
Just name book.
critic assumes.
So
1984.
what would the ideal?
Okay.
reader be?
So 1984, right?
Well, it's very
If you
I don't know,
wanted
it's
to
hard
reduce
to
that to the
interpret.
causes,
But I
causes
think
would
an ideal
be
reader is somebody that
post-fascism,
understands the
19,
text and probably
40s, right?
perfectly.
Understands the text as is,
Society that it's basically
instead of
it's the
saying
social
like my
commentary,
personal
right?
interpretation
On
is this,
on
X, Y, and Z.
it's saying like an
this is
authoritative
literally what it says, and therefore
totalitarian
that's what it
government
is.
that was
Right.
written as a reaction or a response to some things that actually happened in history. Okay, then it says
Why George
the
Orwell wrote it.
reason the ideal reader part, it kind of like is meant to like kind of throw you off because
So
then they
that's
say
an example.
there is
of
no ideal
reducing
reader,
it
of course,
into the causes of why it
but
was
for the
written,
purpose of focusing on the
Right.
poem rather than
Right.
on
Okay,
the
that makes
critic's
sense.
own
Yeah,
reactions.
but if you wanted
is
to
a
be
defensible strategy.
a formalist
Literary
alternatives
critics
are desperate.
you would
Either
have
we
to
say that
divorce
one
it
person's
from
reading is
those,
as good as another's,
causes,
or
Right.
and thus deny the possibility of any standard reading. Or else we take the lowest common denominator of the various readings that have been made. That is, we frankly move from literary criticism
but the reduction
into
of a
social
work
psychology.
of literature to its that's kind of saying a lot.
Good
What do you take
literature
from
is
that?
more
No,
than
I'm
effective
kind of
rhetoric.
lost. Yeah.
You know
in
what's
the
kind
words
of rhetoric?
here.
But like I want to hear
It's literary.
what you
It's like a literary thing.
even.
Well, it's closer to like
Oh my gosh.
an argumentative thing. A rhetoric is like a
Oh, so it's saying
it's
that
it's
it's trying to
kind of like a
present like a way to
I shouldn't say
deal
formalized.
with the idea of there's no ideal reader. So we can
mhm.
either
I don't know, name like a political
we
issue.
can that everybody has the same reading capabilities, or that we just go with the person that
Social housing.
sucks at reading the most.
Social housing, right?
There,
So
exactly. There's
so
in a debate
trust
about
yourself more often
social
than not.
housing, which
Okay.
I guess is
all right. So yeah, that's exactly it.
we should pay for housing for people who can't afford
Okay.
it. Is that the
And the problem with that is that
so there's
it,
going to be a
so you're kind of seeing a
rhetoric,
pattern here,
which is basically
everything that they're saying. It's like
argumentative
if we do
strategy.
it this way, we're no longer doing
that could be
criticism,
for
we're
it
doing
or against
this.
it, right? So
Like
there could be
before
rhetoric
they
that
said
says
it's like biology,
before they
it's
said
universal
it was
rights,
psychology,
it's
before
going
that they
to
said it
be
was
better for society as a whole.
there's going to be
Now they're saying it's social
against
psychology,
it
right?
that says,
But we want it to
if
be
we're
just
a
literary
capitalist
criticism.
society. It's going to
Right.
So
provide free housing for people who.
So yeah, just if
can't
they
do
like
don't
Yeah,
work.
as you read this,
you
you
want to get like a vibe of like the author. So
rhetoric. That's
the author
an
is
important
very
word.
strict.
Is very strict.
You'll see
on,
it.
Let me just
What
Google the
his or
meaning
her
so I can do a
thoughts
better
are
job.
on what literary criticism.
I've written rhetorical
Okay.
essays.
To
College,
propose
I just
taking
don't
a
remember
consensus
what
yeah,
it is.
the opinions
and they're
of
all
qualified
based
readers.
on
Okay, this
like
just
an
keeps
argument,
going
right?
more into
Yeah,
what we all
roughly.
what
That's
it
what
said
I
before.
Yeah. So okay, rhetoric is the art of
It's kind of
effective
just
or persuasive speaking or
saying
writing,
more of
especially the use
same
of figures
thing.
of speech and other
Kind of.
compositional techniques.
Mhm.
So and it's there for a reason.
Basically, it's
throw you off and
a
to make
way
you
to
be like,
persuade
okay, now I have to
somebody. And
understand
when would you
this,
need to
and-
persuade somebody?
But it's just saying
Generally,
the same stuff.
in an argument or
And
debate,
you
right?
can kind of tell because there's no
So
contrast.
if it's on some issue like social housing,
Yeah.
and you
It
want
just goes
to
more
persuade
into
them,
why
in
one way or
the
the
thing
other you're
that
going
they
to
said
use,
wouldn't work,
rhetoric
Mm.
wouldn't work.
Right.
Make sense?
Yeah, I agree. Because sometimes if there's no transition word, then I'm not sure what kind of point they're trying to make.
Yeah, basically, it's the point. It's a point that's already been made. And if you wanted it
but
a little bit more
elaborated on, because it all
so,
comes from like the Greeks.
it
Will only matter if they ask you about it.
which you'll see a lot
Okay.
in passages.
Whenever they refer to the classics,
In which case, it's
for a
you
classical
just go back to
education,
it.
they're referring to the Greeks.
But just the
Okay,
fact that you
hold on, let me
understood
write
it
it
from
What
the first
specifically
part of
about
that paragraph.
Oh,
is
just
okay. So like
and,
rhetoric.
okay,
last paragraph. A literary work
like
is a document,
Aristotle
and as a document can be analyzed
basically
in terms of the forces that have
mentions
produced
three
it,
different forms
or
of
it may be
rhetoric:
manipulated as a force in its own
logos,
right.
ethos,
Mirrors
and
the
pathos.
past. It may influence the future.
I'll write them in
These
the chat.
these facts.
Okay.
It would
Yeah,
be
like I think
futile to deny,
not having
and I know
background
of
in
no
like
critic who
this
does
kind of
deny
stuff
them.
sometimes really sucks.
But wait,
I don't know.
any,
Well,
I just
It's
Huh?
very
convoluted.
Yeah,
Well,
designed.
you're getting them. You're getting
designed
some
to
now.
be that way.
But it's not like you need to be like.
But you see that but
you need to like study everything about it. Just
That's the important part.
just these are the things that will.
So it says,
this
but
is just some
the reduction of a
supplementary, I guess,
work of
information.
literature, because
its
there's a lot
causes
of
does not
passages that talk about the
constitute
classics,
literary
so I'll say
criticism.
that again.
Classics,
Nor does it estimate
classical
education.
does an estimate of its effect.
Right.
And so everything that came before
you
is
see
just
that in the chat,
saying,
right? I'm writing in the
yeah,
chat.
of course we can do this with a literary
that refers
work, blah, blah,
to
blah,
an
which they've said many
education
times
in
before in this passage.
No,
the
Greeks,
but that is not
i.e.
literary
Plato,
criticism. Literary criticism
Socrates,
is a very specific
Aristotle,
and
Right.
that
Yeah.
is
Sometimes
what
as soon as I see
author
those
cares
names, I
about.
get headaches. And what does the reduction of
they're good
work
things to read.
mean?
Oh, just basically, if you take a
But you don't have
literary
to,
work,
but
and you reduce
let
it
me ask you this: what do you
to
think
its
logos
causes,
refers to?
aka
Well,
the psychology
Take into
or
all right,
of the
before
person who wrote it,
or
like 80% of
English
social
language
psychology
is
of the
based
situation
on
around
Greek
it
and Latin roots.
I mean, like, so let me think of an example.
Likely, what it
whatever.
sounds like in English is what it is.
I don't know.
So logos, what does that sound like?
Something like
a logo.
Uncle Tom's
like
Cabin.
Something that
Oh,
identifies.
think of
So
I should say
Uncle
so when
Tom's
I say
Cabin has
roots,
like there's causes.
I mean like prefixes, suffixes
that contributed to
suffixes.
somebody writing Uncle Tom's Cabin, right? Like slavery,
So like
abolitionist movement.
Okay, so think of it that way. All those things. So not like logo, but the LOG part.
If you reduce
A
that
log.
work just to those,
okay, yeah, keep
just to those
I have no
causes,
idea. A record
that's
of
not
something? I
literary
have
criticism.
No idea.
Keep going.
Like what's the context of this?
Like
logos.
like if you took if you wanted to do
the context
literary
is
criticism on Uncle Tom's Cabin
in this particularly, but it's
do you know what I mean by that?
me making your brain flexible.
What do you mean?
Uncle Tom's Cabin?
The book?
Yeah.
Because
you know which book I'm talking about?
you're no one's going
No,
to
I've
go
never
into the
read it.
test
Oh,
knowing everything.
I don't know, just name
So
the book.
once you're
1984.
Okay.
once
So
you see something that you don't
1984,
know,
right? If you wanted to reduce that to
it's like one of the
causes,
most. It's like
causes would
in the
be
slides I wrote like two most important things that I try to teach,
fascism,
and one of them is
19,
tolerance of uncertainty.
40s, right?
So if you don't know,
It's
it's
society that
that's where the learning
it's basically
begins.
it's a
And
social
the other thing
commentary, right?
is confidence in your own self-efficacy. So basically, if you see something that you don't know,
authoritative,
it's okay.
totalitarian
And
government
then
that
you
was
can
written
figure it out.
as a reaction or a response to some
these things
that
might
actually happened in
seem
history,
like they're not
which is
like
why George
whatever
Orwell wrote it, relevant, but
trust me, they will pay.
So that's
pay
an example
forward.
of reducing
So
it
think of
into
other
the
things.
causes of why it was written, and also
right.
like consider in
that makes
Greek
sense.
and stuff
they
would
pronounce
but
it
if you
differently,
wanted
but
to
just
be
think about LOG.
a formalist literary critic, you would have to divorce
a
it
log
from
is a
those
tree.
causes.
Could be
That's good.
could be a tree log, and then like I said, a log
So
is also
There's
related to logarithms, maybe.
um
And then
So-
so it's like
okay,
related to
but the
math,
reduction
and
of
then
a
log
work of
is
literature
Okay,
to
good.
its which
I
is
already
based
said that.
on
logic.
good literature
Yes.
is more than effective rhetoric.
All
You know
right.
what's meant by rhetoric? Okay. So logos is logic, so that's
Just
one of the
means
methods.
literary. It's
That's
like a
one of the
literary thing.
foundational.
It's closer to like
rhetorical
an argumentative thing.
strategies.
A rhetoric is like
Appeal to
a,
people's logic. If you want to convince them. So like using kind of like a
What does ethos sound like?
Emotion.
I shouldn't say formalized.
Kind of, but think of like ETH.
I don't know.
What?
Name like a political
Yeah.
issue.
Social housing.
Social housing, right? So there's
Yeah,
so
just like
in a
people's
debate about social housing, which
well,
I guess
F
is
could mean
like we should pay for housing for people who
Could be
can't afford it. Is
what?
that what that
like
is?
two, like
Okay,
ethanol.
so there's going
Or
to
it
be
could
a
rhetoric, which is basically
I mean, I'm just trying to think of words that starts.
argumentative strategy.
Yeah, you're doing a good job actually.
That could be for it or against it, right? So
Okay.
there could be rhetoric that says,
think of it as
it's
a something
universal
that you
right,
can appeal to
it's going
when
to
convincing
be better
someone.
for society as a whole. There's going to be rhetoric against it that says, you know,
Ethical?
if we're a Catholic society, it's going to provide free housing
Ethical?
for people who
Yeah,
can't get a job,
ethics,
like
yeah.
don't work.
That's
late,
convincing to
all
people?
sorts of stuff.
Oh no, these are just examples
So,
of
rhetoric. That's an important word.
Okay.
You'll
so
see
like
it.
you know
Let me
you
just
can
rule the meaning. One way of
do
do
a better
job.
yeah, like
I've
you
written
said social housing.
rhetorical
We
essays
can use
college.
logos.
I
We
just
can
don't
say
remember
If we
what
use
it is.
social housing,
they're all based
on
like an
people,
argument,
right? Will
Yeah,
have more
roughly,
security
that's what I
and our economy will
rhetoric
be
is the
enhanced
art of
because
effective
more
or
people will
persuasive
have
speaking
a
or
place to
writing,
live. Therefore, more
especially
people
the
will
use
enter the
of figures
job
of speech
force
and other
and our
conversational
GDP would
techniques.
increase.
So
So that's logos, right?
basically, it's
Ethos as well, by saying
a way
it's
to
just a
persuade
fundamental
somebody.
human
And
right.
when would you need
And
to
it's
persuade
not
somebody?
Okay, that
Generally,
people are,
in an
homeless and
argument
stuff.
or a debate, right? Anyway, the last one is pathos,
So if
which
it's
is
emotions.
on some issue like social housing, and you
Anyway,
want to persuade them.
Now back to this.
In one way or the other, you're going to use. Yeah. So.
Right. Okay.
So okay, good literature is
Mhm.
more than effective rhetoric applied to true ideas. Even if we could agree upon a philosophical yardstick for measuring the truth of ideas,
And if you
even
wanted
we
to
could find
a little
some
bit
way
more,
that
because it all
transcended
comes from
nose
the
counting
Greeks,
for determining the effectiveness of
which
rhetoric.
you'll see a lot in passages whenever they refer to
So,
the classics.
Overall,
or
that's
classical
just
education, they're referring
saying
to the Greeks.
what good literature
Okay,
is.
hold on, let me write it down. What specifically about?
But
Ultimately,
just,
the main point of all of this is
okay, so like rhetoric,
what literary criticism is, and particularly
Aristotle,
what formalist literary criticism is.
basically
So this
mentions
question,
three
according to the
different forms
passage,
of rhetoric.
formalist criticism focuses primarily
Logos,
on
ethos,
which of
and
the following
pathos.
aspects of a literary work.
I'll write them in the
So
chat.
we know. So another thing
Yeah, like, I
to
think
focus on
Not
is,
having
and
background
this can help if
in
you're running
like
out of time
this kind of stuff
and
sometimes
you
really
haven't
sucks.
read it or whatever. What's different from the rest?
I don't know.
Well, so its effect on the reader
You're getting them. You're getting
right,
some now.
is
One of
but
those
it's not
things
like you
that's
need to
saying,
be
like,
we have to take
you
into
need to, like,
consideration
study everything
the
about
effect
it.
has
Just,
on the reader. After all,
just
the
you know,
reader
these are the things
literature
that
is made
will-
for
This is just
the
some
person who reads
supplementary,
it,
I
right?
guess, information. Because
Now that's similar
there's
to
a lot of passages that talk about the
classics. So I'll say that
the other
again,
thing that they said,
classics,
which is
or
the
classical
author's
education.
motivations, right?
Right.
And
And
then
see
all
that
the
in
way
the
at
chat,
the
right? I'm
end,
writing in the
it
chat.
says the truth
that refers
of its
to
ideas and education in the Greeks, i.e. Plato.
the only thing
Socrates,
that's different,
Aristotle,
is its structure.
Right.
Its structure
Yeah, sometimes
is
when
not
as soon as I see those names, I get headaches.
concerned with
They're
how it has
good
an
things to
effect on the
read.
person who reads it. It's not concerned with the person's
But
motivation
you
for
don't have
writing
to,
it, and it's not
but
concerned with how true.
let me ask you this:
It
what do you
is.
think logos
Only
refers to?
focus on
Well,
the writing itself.
Take
wait,
into all right before I
I mean,
Like
so I did this
80%
a few
of
months
English
ago.
language is based
Either way,
on
I think
Greek
reading it
and Latin
now,
roots.
I would actually think
So
D might throw me
likely
off.
what it sounds like
If-
in English
because that's
is
what
it
they
is.
try to do at the end,
logos,
right? What does that sound
By
like?
saying that
a logo, like something that I can.
think of I should say
so when I say
the thing about
roots,
truth
or
good literature is more than
like
effective
prefixes,
rhetoric
suffixes,
applying to true ideas.
suffixes.
So
Well, okay, wait. Why would it throw you off?
so like okay, so think of it
Because
that way.
actually, wait.
So not like logo, but
I'm just a little confused about
LOG
what it means by the truth of its ideas. A log. Does that
Oh, yeah.
mean?
Okay, yeah,
Wait,
keep going.
truth of its ideas.
I have no idea.
Actually, it's not really related.
I have no idea.
Right?
Keep
Like, what's
going.
the context
Because
of this?
Mhm.
The
like,
truth of
logos,
the idea
ethos, and
is
pathos.
Well, the
right. It
context
doesn't really matter.
is yeah.
in this particularly,
and think about the
but
things
it's
with
also
rhetoric.
me making your brain
Right.
flexible. Like that's that's the
Okay.
art of persuasion.
You know, no one's going to go into the test knowing everything.
If you have to use rhetoric,
so once
like,
you're,
to persuade someone,
once you see
it's
something that you don't know,
to get them to agree with a specific side, which isn't going to
it's
be
like one of the most,
true. It's like in the slides there,
necessarily,
like
it's just
two
going
most
to
important things that I
help
try to
you
teach,
and one of them is
persuade them
tolerance
that
of
to
uncertainty.
believe that it's true.
Mhm.
So if you don't
Right.
know, it's okay, but
Yeah.
that's where the learning begins.
But
And
the
the first
other
thing that I see is just how
confidence in your own
everything
self-efficacy.
Yeah.
is.
So basically,
I just
if
see
you
that
see something that you don't know,
its structure,
it's okay,
and
is
then you
different
can
from everything
figure
else.
it out. And
Mhm.
and when you look at
these
things might seem
like they're not like whatever
your highlights,
relevant,
right?
but trust me, they will pay
Like where you highlighted it.
think of other things.
You're basically seeing just and
also,
how
like,
it's
consider
basically
you're
in
just
looking
Greek
at
and stuff.
the
They
word
would pronounce it
itself,
differently, but just think about log.
right? So so that's nothing else.
Well, a log is a
Just
tree.
the work itself. Like
Could be a-
in third paragraph,
Oh,
Could
that's good. That's
the
good.
formalist critic
Could be a
is
tree
concerned
log, and then,
primarily
like I
with the
said,
work
a
itself.
log
Right.
is also
Related to
that's the
logarithms,
keyword.
maybe.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then so it's like
That
related to
defines
math,
what a
and then
formalist
log
is.
is
Math,
also
okay, good. Which is based on
logic.
yes,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So
right.
yeah, that's where the answer
the
is.
logos
But,
is logic,
also,
so that's one of the methods.
think about it in
That's one
terms
of
of
the
how it's different from everything
foundational
else. All the other
rhetorical
choices, right?
strategies.
For sure.
Appeal to
Because
people's logic. They do talk about the effect on the reader. They do
want
talk
to
about the
convince
author's
them.
motivations.
So,
They
like,
do
using
talk about the
facts.
truth of its
What does
ideas.
ethos sound like?
Emotions, maybe.
But they always say
Kind of,
that.
but
Those are the
think of,
things
like,
that the formalist critic
ETH.
rejects.
What
Makes sense.
All right. Any questions there?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay.
on that.
Let's see what's after
Yeah,
that.
just like people's
Oh, okay. It's the same one.
Well,
Okay. Implicit in the passage is the
could be-
assumption that. Okay.
Could
So
be what?
like two, like
know about like
or it
Oh.
could-
implicit and explicit.
I mean, I'm just trying to think of words that
Um,
starts with
So if it's
Yeah, you're doing a
implicit,
good
is it
job,
going to
actually.
actually be there in the passage?
F.
No. Okay. Good.
does
Does
Think
that
of it
work
as
every
something
time?
that you can appeal
Because-
to when
Mhm.
convincing someone.
like sometimes like if I see something it's like implicit, then
Oh.
I would think so that it's probably not explicitly said
Ethical?
in the passage.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
then sometimes the answers
Okay,
That's-
they'll be somehow
Ethical?
more related, so I'm like,
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
so basically like
that's convincing to people.
if something is
No. These are
implicit,
just examples
like
of
if it's implied
rhetoric.
Okay.
So like you can,
There will
you
be
can
things
persu-
that were explicitly
one way
stated
that would
like
make
said social
it
housing.
so that thing
Okay.
that is implied
we
is
can use
implied.
logos. We can
Like
say
if I said,
if we do social housing, our people will have more security
or I
and
could use
our
this as an
economy
example,
will
but
be enhanced because more
well,
people
okay.
will
I mean,
have a place to
if
live.
it's
Therefore, more people
explicitly
will enter the
stated
job
that the
force
formalist
and
critic
our
is concerned
GDP will
primarily with the
increase.
work itself,
So that's logos, right?
it's implied that
Ethos
the
as well,
formalist
by
critic
saying it's just a fundamental
is
human
not
right, and it's not
concerned
okay
with
that people are homeless and stuff.
like the author's motivation.
Anyway, the last one is pathos, which is emotions.
Even like
okay.
even though it says explicitly that
Now
he's
back
not
to this.
concerned with whatever, like
Good.
you can still
Um,
find explicit examples,
So
but those are the ones that let you
good literature
answer
is more
something
than
that's
effective
implied.
rhetoric applied
It's
to
kind
true
of like,
ideas.
an
Even if we
inference.
could agree upon
Right.
a philosophical yardstick for measuring
So this
the
one is
truth of
saying
ideas,
is the
and even if we could
assumption
find some way that
that
transcended nose counting for determining the
see,
effectiveness
some
of the
critical
rhetoric.
evaluations of literature are more valuable than others.
So
Criticism that dismisses
overall,
the author's motivation
that's just saying
is ineffective.
what
The
good
ideal
literature
reader is one who has
is,
attempted to create a work of art. Good
Mhm.
okay. Good literature
but
is nothing
ultimately
more than
the main
effective
point
rhetoric
of all of
applied to
this
true
is
ideas. What literary criticism is,
okay,
and
so
particularly
between
what
A and
formalist
B,
literary criticism is. So for this
Mhm.
question, According to the
Some
passage,
critical
formalists'
evaluations of
criticism
literature are more
focuses
valuable than
primarily
others,
on which of the
versus
following aspects
criticism
of
that
a literary
dismisses the
work
author's motivation is
So,
ineffective.
we know.
So another thing to
So-
focus on is,
All right,
and this
what do
can
you
help
think
if you're running out of
Well,
time.
to me, it seems
and,
like
you know,
this
you haven't
question
read
is
it or
not
whatever,
asking
what's
about the main
different from the
idea of
rest?
the passage. Like, it's asking for something that's kind of
So,
like secondary to the main
its
idea.
effect on the reader.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Right?
I think everything
Is
kind of comes back to the main idea.
one of those
but
things
maybe
that's
like
saying, like, you know,
what
we have to take into
how most
consideration
people say
the
main
effect
idea
it
is
has
different
on
from
the reader.
how I
After
say it.
all,
The reader
Okay.
literature is made
So,
for the person
you
who
know,
reads
I,
it, right?
I see the main idea as
Now that's similar to
formalist critic
is only concerned with
you
the
know,
structure. The other thing that they said,
Yeah,
which is
I agree.
the author's motivations, right?
So okay.
Right.
And then all the way at the
So, okay,
end, it
criticism that
says dismisses the author's
truth
motivation
of
is
its ideas.
ineffective. Right?
No, that's not related. I see why that's
But
wrong, but
the
I'm
only
kind
thing
of
that's different,
why A is right.
right?
Okay,
is its
so
structure.
this is another
Its
thing with
structure
cars,
is
and
not
I'll tell you why A is right, but also
concerned with
a lot of times
how it has an effect on the
least
person who reads it.
wrong
It's not
answer is
concerned
the
with
right
the
one.
person's motivation.
And
Right.
if
for
you
writing
can
it, and it's
know
not
for
concerned
certain
with
that
how
B is
true
wrong
it
and
is.
C is wrong and D is
Only
wrong,
focus
then
on
A must be
the
right,
writing itself, right?
Yeah, right.
Now,
I mean,
okay, so
so
now
I did this
why
a few
is A
months
right?
ago.
Mhm.
Either
Like,
way,
if you
I
wanted
think
to know,
reading
right?
it now, I would actually think
D
D might
somewhere.
throw me off. If
Yes.
Well,
Because
there's an
that's what
assumption,
they try to do at
right?
the end, right? By saying
So
that
I would look around
there,
you know, kind of like where
it says
where you
the thing
highlighted
about
the numbers.
choose
Yeah.
or good literature is more than effective rhetoric applying to true ideas. So you see where it says for number two,
why would it throw you off?
Yeah.
Assumes a
because actually wait,
ideal
I'm just
reader, right?
I'm just a little confused about what it means by the truth of its ideas. Does that
Oh, yeah.
mean
Yeah.
wait, truth of its ideas? Actually it's not really related. Like right? The second number?
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
the truth of the idea
Does it
is
say something?
right, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. And think about the things with rhetoric.
Right.
Like that's persuade. That's the art of
So it says
persuasion.
that
The formalist critic
So,
assumes an ideal reader.
you know, if
that
you
is,
have to use
instead of
rhetoric,
focusing on the varying spectrum
like,
of possible
you know,
readings, the critic attempts
to persuade
blah, 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 blah.
someone,
It's
right?
to
So-
get them
so,
to agree with a specific
later on it
side,
says
which
there's
isn't
no
gonna
ideal
be
reader, of course,
true,
blah, blah, blah.
necessarily.
And
It's
the
just
reasons
going
why
to
hard
help
to
you
actually find,
persuade
you know,
them that
what
to believe that
an
it's
ideal
true.
reader is.
Right.
But
Clearly,
But-
the formalist critic
But
has
the first thing that I see is just how
like an ideal
everything
reader in mind. That's not
is
like in
I just
actuality.
see that, but the
its
ideal
reader in
structure
mind is the one that focuses
is,
on, you know, the
different
central
from
point
everything
of
else.
reference that is that the
and when you
structure
look at
of
your
that,
literary
like,
work
is based upon.
your highlights, right? Or
Mhm.
like where you have highlighted it, you're
Yeah.
basically
So
seeing just
critical
you know,
valuations,
how
that
it's
means
basically you're
just like
just looking
critics,
at
right?
the work
That
itself.
reviews
Yeah,
literary.
Yeah. So
So-
basically,
So that's
like a
you know,
critique.
nothing else.
Mhm.
Certain
Just
critiques
the work itself.
of
Like in
literature
third
are
paragraph,
more valuable
The
than
formalist
others.
critic is concerned
Yeah.
primarily with the
So
work
there
itself.
could be a
Right.
you know a critique that bases it
That's the
on
key word.
you know
Yeah.
the intention of the author,
That
right?
defines what a formalist is.
Yep.
You know, you see that in one.
Wow.
So like just where it says
Yeah.
assumption, I would go
So
to where it
so,
talks about
yeah, that's where the
assumptions.
answer is. But you know, also
Right.
Where,
think about
so
it in
like
terms
maybe
of
like you know where you
how it's
highlighted
different
one
from
and
everything
two,
else.
I would highlight the assumptions
All the other
before
choices,
number
right?
where it says one.
For sure. Right.
Because the
Yeah.
you know they do talk about the effect
That's
on the
where I
reader.
would
They
look.
do talk about
I
the
see.
author's
I would
motivations.
read the
they
question.
do talk about
Implicit
the truth
in the
of ideas.
passage
Is the assumption that, and I'd go to where it says
Mhm.
assumptions. But they always say
And
that
so it says assumptions.
those
One,
are the things that the
relevant
formalist
part
critic rejects.
of the author's intention is what the author
Yeah,
actually put
makes
into the
sense.
work. Intention
Right.
as
Any questions
realized
there?
is the one that
No,
counts.
I think I'm good.
So that means that
Okay.
No.
if it's not the intention as realized, it doesn't count. So the one that matters,
okay, it's the same one. Okay,
implicit in the passage is
that.
the assumption.
The other ones
that-
don't matter. Okay, so
you know about
one
like,
way is better
implicit
than others.
and explicit. And stuff.
Okay.
Wow.
So if it's implicit, is it going to actually be there in the passage?
It's
no. Okay, good.
You
would still be able to
every time.
answer it
because
B, C, and D won't be it.
like sometimes like if I see something it's like implicit, then I
But
would
you know,
think,
this is what I mean. Like I don't like to just say
so that
A
it's
is the
probably
answer
not
because
explicitly said in the passage.
B,
But
C, and
then
D are not the
sometimes
answer.
the answers will still be
I like to
somewhat
actually
related.
go
So I'm
into
like,
why.
Okay,
is
okay.
the
So
answer.
basically like
Right.
and
if
that
something is
fine.
implicit,
So like, reading
like
this,
if it's
it says
implied,
assumption, I would go to where it says assumptions.
right.
There will be
Yeah.
things that were explicitly
and like overall, when you
stated.
read this, you know,
that
the vibe you
would
should be getting is that
make it so that thing that is
formalist
implied is
literary
implied.
critic,
Like if I
is
said
super
strict, like clearly thinks this is the way to do it, and
if
other
I
ways
or
are inferior.
I could just use this as an example, but
Right.
so that's
Well,
like
okay.
the
I mean,
vibe, kind of.
if it's
Right.
explicitly
Any
stated that
questions
the
there?
formalist critic is concerned primarily with the work itself, it's implied that
Did
the
I send you
formalist
any other
critic
questions from this passage or no?
is
Mhm.
not
Oh.
concerned.
Well, I
with,
kind of do have to go.
like
Oh, okay.
the author's motivations. There's
Right.
one more that you said.
Even
Wait,
like, you know,
even though
Is it
it
from the
says
same
explicitly that he's not concerned with whatever.
oh yeah.
You can still find explicit
Yeah,
examples.
there's one more from this
but those are the
passage,
ones
then
that
you
let
sent me
you
one from a different
answer
one.
something that's implied.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can
kind of like
do
an
that one,
inference.
the last one from
Right.
this passage,
Okay.
and then
So
yeah,
this one is
then
saying
we can-
is the assumption
I can let you
that
Sounds good.
has this been like
so
helpful
okay.
so
See,
far?
some critical
Yeah, it's
evaluations
good
of
to
literature are more
talk
valuable than
out
others.
loud.
Criticism that dismisses the author's
because I try to
motivation
do that at home.
are
I did it for
is ineffective.
and I just stopped.
The ideal
because
reader is
it
one
takes
who has
effort
attempted to
to,
create
like,
a work
talk
of
to
art.
yourself.
Good literature
Yeah,
is
no,
nothing
definitely.
more than effective rhetoric applied to true
Yeah.
ideas.
Okay, good. All right.
So
So
okay,
the last
so
one
between
says,
A
for which
and
of the following
B,
conclusions does the passage
Mm-hmm.
offer the most support?
some critical
So
evaluations
this
of
is
literature are more
where
valuable than others.
you
Versus
basically
criticism that
this is
dismisses
like
the author's
the
motivation is
grunt
ineffective.
work
kind of questions, where you
So-
kind of like just look at
all right. What do you
Like
think?
the choices.
Well, to me, it seems
Try
like
to
this
find
question is
them,
not
and
asking
then
about the
see
main
if
idea.
there's
of
any
the
like
passage.
evidence
It's asking for something that's kind of
used
like
to support it.
secondary to the main idea.
Or
Which
yeah, I
one
mean,
is
like
given
I
the
think
most
everything kind of comes back to the main idea.
So-
but maybe like
So I
what
call it the
you-
grunt
how
work
most
because
people
it
say main
means
idea
that
is
we're gonna
different
have to
from
do
how
some
I
work
say it.
here.
Okay. Mhm.
So you know, I see the main idea is
So how would you go? about
formalist
this?
critic is only concerned with the
just
structure.
Go by answer choices.
I agree.
So okay. So
if-
okay. Criticism that dismisses
Alright,
the
so
author's
yeah, go.
motivation is ineffective.
So merely potential until it is read, it's kind of
No,
at the
that's not
beginning.
related.
I see why that's wrong, but I'm kind of why A
It
is
doesn't
right.
really say much about it.
Okay,
afterwards.
so this is another
It
thing
just
with
says
cars, and I'll
Mhm.
tell you why A is right,
So,
but also
eliminate.
a lot of
Okay.
times the
A
least
literary work can be
wrong
analyzed
answer is the right one. And
Right.
if you can
Yeah,
know for
I
certain
chose this
that
one
B is
because it talks
wrong,
about the forces that
C is
produce
wrong
it.
and D is
Gave like
wrong,
all these examples.
then A
So,
must be right.
Like it says, oh, motive
Okay.
for money or
Right?
like, yeah,
Now, okay,
et cetera,
so
et cetera. So
now
I was like, oh,
why
this
is A
sounds
right?
like it has support.
Like if you
So I
wanted to
chose
know,
it.
right? So
But
remember when
I think
we came
is it
across
mentioned
part of the
somewhere?
passage where I said,
well, there's an assumption.
we don't have to read
Right.
the rest of it because it's just going
So
in depth
I would look
into
around there.
the same thing.
Right.
So that kind of
like where
is a
the-
clue
where you highlighted
as
the
to
numbers.
because when I
Yeah.
saw it, I kind of like knew that that's something that we're going to come back to.
Oh,
So you see
Okay.
where, and that's the
says for
third
number
or
2.
1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
4, 5. That's the
Assumes
fifth
a
paragraph.
mhm.
You know where it says there's no ideal reader,
right?
right? And then it keeps going and it keeps saying, to propose finding. So the part that you said is like either, everyone's
the
reading
second
is
number,
is
number two.
or the things that you said, the
Wait,
two
does it
examples or
say
whatever,
anything?
like that's some support right there. And then after that, it keeps going. It says like we're gonna have to split it into a group of ideal readers, and So it says
did
that
thing,
the formalist critic
proves
assumes
the
an ideal reader
author's
that is
sincerity or
instead of focusing
whatever,
on the varying spectrum of possible readings.
but if we do that, we discount
blah blah blah
some
blah
other thing,
right?
So that's just the most kind of
later on it
support
says there's no ideal reader, of course, blah blah
elaborate,
blah. And the reason why it's
elaboration,
hard
that's not a
to actually find, what an
but
ideal reader
it gives you
it's the
but
most like elaborate
clearly
kind
the
of formalist critic has explanation
like
or an ideal reader
or,
in mind that's not like in actuality.
Yeah, it's the
But
most
the ideal
like
reader in mind is the one that
support that's
focuses
given to
on
something.
the central point of reference that is that
So
the
I didn't choose this
structure
one
of that
because
literary work is
I just
based
thought
on.
that it says the question says which of the following conclusions. So then it says literary critics must assume an ideal reader. So then I assume
critical
valuations.
valuations,
The passage
means
have to say something
just like
about
critics, right?
that why that
Reviews.
conclusion is true
Mhm.
or like
Yeah,
support it. But I just
so
don't really
basically
feel like it's supported.
like
Oh,
a
I see what you're
critique.
saying.
Oh, because it
Mhm.
says
Certain critique. Oh, I see what you're saying.
of literary critic must
are
assume an
more
ideal
valuable
reader,
than
and then it
others.
says there is no ideal
Yeah.
reader, of course.
So
right?
there could be a
a critique.
okay, that makes
bases
sense. That
it
makes sense.
on,
So
so okay,
the intention of the author, right?
So they're
Um,
saying,
you
so
see that
okay,
in
if
one.
the conclusion
So, like,
is saying
just where it says
that
assumption, I
you-
would go
that
that
there
where it
is-
talks about assumptions.
okay, so first of all, they're
Right.
saying an assumption
Where-
is that
so, like,
there is
maybe,
an
like,
ideal
where you
reader.
highlighted 1 and 2, I would
And then the
highlight
conclusion is there
assumptions
is no
before
ideal
where
reader.
it says 1.
Right.
Everything after
Yeah.
is saying
Because
that
that's where I would look. I would read the question
know,
and put
it's a
in the
defensible
passage
strategy,
is the assumption
right?
that, and I
like
go to where it says
this is how we would go about
and so it
finding
says
an ideal
assumptions.
reader.
One,
Like it's still
relevant
something
part
that
of
is
the author's intention is what the author actually put into the
supported.
work.
Like that entire
Intention is
long
realized is the
paragraph
one that counts.
I
So that means
like,
that
Yeah.
kind of like
if it's not the
over
if it's not the
because
intention
you
as
understood it
realized,
from
it
the
doesn't
get-go,
count.
is just a
So
lot.
the one that
of
matters
of basically
is
that.
support. The other ones
Or-
don't matter. Something.
Oh, So
So,
it's
but
so
So
it's support for
one
it
way
being a
is
defensible
better than
strategy,
others.
which is the, okay.
Yeah. Because
Wow, that's
because
that's
they're saying that
It's
that we're assuming
It's
that there
like
is an ideal reader.
you would still be able to answer it.
Of course, there
because
is no
B, C,
ideal
and D
reader.
won't be it.
But for the purpose of
Um,
focusing on the
But
poem,
this is what I mean. Like I don't
doing
like
all
to
this
just
stuff
say
that we're
A is the
doing
answer
with,
because
the formalist
B, C, and
literary
D are not the
criticism.
answer.
We're going to
I like
actually
to actually go into why A is the answer.
see see if we can
and
defend
that
this
is
strategy.
so like reading
Of
this, the
it says
possibility of
assumption,
there
I would
being
go
an
to
ideal
where
reader.
it says assumptions.
Right.
So like
Right.
even though
Yeah.
that particular
And like
statement
overall,
says
when you
there's
read
no
this,
ideal reader,
the
of
vibe you
course,
should be getting is that
it
spends that
a
entire
formalist
paragraph saying
literary critic is
like
in
super
support
strict, like
of clearly thinks this is the way to do it, and
whether
other
or not
ways
there
are
could be an
inferior.
ideal reader.
Right. Yeah.
So
I see exactly
like
what
the
vibe
you're saying, like why you're saying that.
Right.
Any questions there? But it's not. Yeah, it's not going. They're never going to ask you like what's right or what's wrong.
Did I send you
They're
any
always
other
going to
questions
ask
from
you
this
like
passage?
from the author's perspective. So like the author's
Well, I kind of do
perspective.
have to go.
What is the author?
Oh, okay.
Like
There's
it doesn't matter if there's an ideal
one
reader
more
or
that you
not. Like
said?
from the
Wait.
what is the author trying
Is it from the
to
same passage?
trying to
there's
what is the
one
author
more from this passage?
trying
Then you
the
sent me
hardest
one from a
to
different one.
Yeah.
so
Support.
yeah, we can
Using
like do that one
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
last one from
Okay.
this
Yeah, makes sense.
passage, and then
Okay.
then we can,
That makes sense.
so
I can let you go.
okay, hopefully that
Has
was
this been like
helpful
so far?
Yeah. Yeah, it's good to
and
talk
I
out loud.
know you're out of
know
time,
what the
so
passage is saying.
because
you know,
I
you
try
can
to do
send
that
me,
at home.
you know, more of
I
these
did it for
things. I'll
and
make
I
like
just stopped
that
because it
notebook,
takes
the
effort
OneNote
to like
notebook. I'll
talk to
share it with
yourself.
you. And
yeah, no, definitely.
you said you also had some questions with like physics and cell bio and genetics. And
Okay,
stuff.
good. All right. So okay,
Yeah.
The last one says,
So,
for which of the
yeah,
following
so you can send me
conclusions does
questions
the
on that stuff
passage
as well.
offer the most support?
Yeah, sure. I mean, no,
So
physics
this is
mostly
where
like for me,
you
physics
basically
is like in terms of
this is like
content really
the
weak for
grunt
me.
work kind
And
of questions.
I just on
where
test day, I
you
just
kind of
pray
like
that
just
I don't get
look
physics
at
questions, and that's
the
how I get through the
choices,
chem phys section.
try to find them, and then
Yeah.
see if there's
So yeah,
any like
it's. I mean, I can definitely
evidence
send you more detail on like which ones
used
that
to
I'm talking
support
about.
it.
Yeah. I think
Mhm.
it's
Or
useful to know that
which one is given the most support.
like so
Kind of like,
so
I call it the
well,
grunt work
alright,
because
we'll
it means that
go
we're
from
gonna
what
have to
you
do some work here.
Yeah, and like I mean, last thing
Mhm.
I'll say is like
So-
for physics is
Yeah. So
for me it's
so
mostly
how would
my
you go about
strategy
this?
is really bad,
would
but
just
it kind of
go by
works, which is
answer
why I
choices.
got an okay score on it.
Yeah,
My strategy for physics is to
okay,
memorize
so
everything, like all the formulas.
okay, I want to
Alright,
say right
so
away
yeah, go.
that physics
So merely
is like
potential until it
so
is
like
read, it's kind of at the
biology is
beginning,
applied
I think,
chemistry,
of the
chemistry is
passage.
applied physics.
Yeah.
Paragraph.
So if your
It doesn't really say much about it.
conceptual understanding of
afterwards.
physics is sound,
It just says
everything else comes naturally.
It's
so
not
So
eliminate.
like so
Okay.
so the memorization,
A
because you
literary
probably
word
read a
can
bunch
be
of posts
analyzed.
from me
So
saying you don't need to memorize that.
yeah, I
And
chose
it's
this one
true.
because it talks
And
about the forces that produce it.
you
It
know,
gave like all these
there's like a video
examples.
of me with one
So,
of my students
Like it says,
talking
oh,
about
motive
amino
for money,
acids.
or like
yeah.
And
et cetera,
she
et
was
cetera. So
saying
I was
like,
like, oh,
like,
this
I have to
sounds
memorize
like
them all.
it
And
has
so we just went
support.
through every
So I
single
chose.
like in the
So
question
remember
bank or
when
one of the things we came
came
across
every
every
single
single
one
one
that
passage
asked
where
about
amino acids.
I said,
And
we don't have to read
we
the
were
rest
able
of
to
it
answer
because
them
it's just
all.
going
I mean,
in
like all
depth
you need to
into
know are the same
know.
thing. If
Right.
you know the why,
So
like
that kind of
everything else can
is
be
a
deduced.
clue.
So
as
if you
to
just memorize
when
all
I
the
saw
amino
it,
acids,
I kind of like
it's
knew
like
that
that's
the same
something
thing
that
with
we're
like
gonna come back
memorizing
to.
vowels versus consonants.
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
the way that I memorize the
So,
amino
and that's the
acids
third.
is
I know
part
the ones that
one,
are
two,
basic. I
three,
know the
four,
ones that
five.
are
That's the fifth
acidic.
paragraph.
So if they're not the
Mhm.
basic
you know
ones
where
or
it says
acidic
there's no
ones,
ideal reader,
they're all
right?
the other ones, you know.
and then it keeps
amino
going
acids
and it
not
keeps saying, you know,
is the
To
yeah.
propose
oh no,
Yes,
I'm
it
just
is.
using that as an
finding.
example.
So the part that you said is like either
so if
you know like everyone's
but
reading
yeah,
is
once you send
or
me you know stuff
Okay.
the things that
for
you said,
physics
the
and
two
stuff,
examples or whatever,
and
like that's some support right there.
and
Yeah,
then
you said
after
like
that it
genetics
keeps going
and
and
cell
it
bio.
says like we're gonna have to
Yeah.
split it
Because I
into a
didn't take
group
those
of ideal
college,
readers.
so I was
And
very
Yeah, I mean,
know,
it's just
if
anyway.
we did
And like
this
I just have one last
thing,
question that I
this
was gonna ask.
proves the author's
So
sincerity or
for
whatever.
cars, I think when I was doing my
But if we do
practice
that, we
questions
discount
for
some
the
other
AMC, like
thing.
the actual full
So
length
that's
ones,
just the most like
after the
kind
car
of
section,
support
I felt like I
or
understood
you
every
know
passage.
elaborate like
But then on my actual
elaboration.
exam, I
That's
felt
not a
like I
word.
didn't understand any passages. So then
But
I also
it
feel like
gives
the
you
actual one might
it's
be
the
harder
most
than
like
the AMC ones,
elaborate kind of
but I could be wrong. I don't know.
well so I mean like you know
explanation
everyone
or
takes the AAMC
or
ones so they're going to design
it's
you know
the
the
most
actual
like
test
to be
support
that's given to
to
something.
at least look as different
right.
from the
Okay.
AAMC
So
ones
I
as
didn't choose
possible.
this one
So
because
that is just
I
you
just
know
thought that
on an
it
actual
says
test
the question
it's,
says
you know for the first time
which of the
ever.
following
So
conclusions.
you're going to feel
So
a little
then
bit
it
more
says
you know,
literary
stress
critics must assume an ideal
and
reader. So then
you
I
know, fear
thought it
and
would
things like that.
the passage would have to say something about
But I
why that
you know I would
conclusion
like
is true or like support
you
it.
know
But I just don't really feel like it's
speculate.
supported.
Or
I see what
even
you're
more than
saying.
speculate.
I would say that if there is
I see what
an
you're saying.
AAMC
Literary critic
must
test that
assume an
you're
ideal
not taking,
reader,
and then it says there is no
and I
ideal
switch
reader,
that
of course,
out,
right?
switch a passage out with one from
No,
like, a
okay,
new
that makes
test
sense. That makes sense.
that you take like
on test day.
so that it
So, okay.
wouldn't be different.
So
It's
they're
just that
saying
once you're taking the test,
so okay,
like,
if
the
the
pressure's
conclusion
on,
is saying
you know,
that
and it's like it's a long test,
there
and you have to
that there
maintain,
is
you know, your
okay. So first of all, they're
attention
saying
span
an
for,
assumption
like,
is that
what,
there
like 8
is an ideal
hours?
reader.
And then the conclusion is,
and especially if
no
you're like concerned most with cars, like it's going to be
everything after
you're,
saying,
you know, it's going to be easier to kind of like freak out.
You know, it's a defensible strategy,
So,
right?
I know you mentioned
Like,
something about
this
timing
is
and
how
stuff,
we
and
would
we
go
can
about
over that as well.
finding an
The
ideal
way
reader.
that
Like, it's
I
still
deal
something
with
that
timing
is
with students is like at first we don't
supported, like
think about
that
time,
entire long paragraph.
because
that,
at first
you know,
it's like it's building
kinda
up
like
the ability to be able to answer the
over
question right because you understood it from the get-go.
then
Is
after
just
that,
a lot
we can
step up
of
the
timing
timing
support
aspect of it,
or
because by that
something.
point you at least know that
So
you're
is it- so
capable of answering the right question, and it's
Support for
not
it
just a
being a
matter of
defensible
chance.
strategy, right? Which
So yeah, we can do it
because
so we can do it like
they're
that.
saying they're saying
if
that
makes sense.
but
You're
then
saying
we're
like
assuming
on
that
the
there is
actual
an ideal
test, like,
reader.
you're saying you come away
Of course,
from it
there
like,
is no ideal reader,
feeling like,
but for
that
the
you
purpose
didn't
of focusing
understand,
on the poem
I
and
didn't understand
doing
what the
all this
passage
stuff
was
that we're
saying,
doing with
and also there's a few questions that
formalist
were
literary criticism,
like totally like
um,
requires
we're
like
going to
multiple levels
actually,
of logic that I was like, there's no way I can figure this out like right now. I feel like,
see if we can
yeah,
defend
different passages have
of
different
the possibility
levels
of
of
there being an
difficulty
ideal
based
reader.
on what
Right.
each individual
So, like,
is comfortable with.
Even though
So I
that
also
particular
favor the
statement
approach of,
says
like,
there is no
sticking
ideal
around,
reader, of course,
which takes practice. It's not for
spends that
everyone.
entire paragraph saying
But
like
since
in support
since you have a finite
the
period of time, and since
whether or
not
not
every
there could be an
passage
ideal reader.
is equal in
Yeah.
terms of
So I
difficulty,
see exactly
and since
what
not every question is
you're
equal
saying,
in
like
terms
why
of
you're
difficulty,
saying that,
it doesn't make sense to give every single question
but it's
or
not
passage the same amount of
it's not
time.
going they're never going
So
to ask you
you don't
like,
want
what's
to,
right or what's wrong.
spend too much time
They're
on
always going to
passage
ask
like
you
whatever
like
four,
from
because
the
it's hard,
author's
and
perspective.
one at
So
a
like
time
the
for
author's perspective,
passages that come on later.
what
that might
is
be
the
easier.
author,
yeah,
like it doesn't
Um,
matter if there's an ideal
so,
reader or
yeah,
not.
so
Like
send me
what is the author
send me,
trying
as
to
much as possible,
trying
and
to
I'll put it in a OneNote and I'll share that with you.
or what is the
and,
author
we can go from
trying
there.
the hardest to
And should I so
support
in terms of
using-
payment, should I pay you in
Yeah.
through
yeah,
because I mean PayPal's the
Okay.
only way I can think of right now. That makes sense.
Yeah, you can
So,
do
okay.
you can do PayPal.
Hopefully that
I
was
will
helpful.
send you the details. And
Yeah.
that. I know you're
Right.
out of
Just
time,
send me like
so
how you want me to like.
you
send
can
it.
send me more of these things.
Sure,
I'll
sure.
make like
Okay.
that
Now,
notebook,
yeah.
the OneNote notebook.
So yeah, and then
I'll share it
send
with
me
you.
as
And
many questions.
you
or
said you also
passages
had
as
some
possible.
questions with like physics and genetics and stuff.
And you said
Yeah.
2 to 3 times
So,
a week.
Yeah, so you can send me
Yeah.
questions on that stuff as well.
I've never.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
I mean,
haven't
no, physics
had a
is mostly
clear.
like for me. Physics
for
is,
the
like,
last
in
exam
terms
that I
of
studied for
content
because I
really
just
weak for
didn't
me.
have time to
And
do it.
I
But
just
now that I'm retaking it,
on
I
test day I just pray that I
have
don't
the
get
content
physics
somewhat
questions, and
down,
that's how
so
I get through the chem
Mhm.
phys section.
some extra help.
Yeah, of course. That's what
So
I'm
yeah,
here for.
it's. I mean, I can definitely send you more detail on like which ones that
Alright.
I'm talking about.
So,
yeah. I think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
useful
Well,
to know
I'll
that
email you with. I mean, I'm very
like,
available, so I'll just email you with
kind of
when
like
I think we should.
well, all right. We'll
meet again.
go from
Probably
what you
like.
sent.
Yeah,
in a
and
few
like
days.
I mean, last
If
thing I'll
that's okay
say
with
is
you.
like for physics is
Yeah. I
For
just
me, it's
want you
mostly-
to, send me as
my
much
strategy
like material so I get as
really
much
bad,
of an
but it
idea
kind of
as
works,
possible
which is why
as
I
to
got an okay
what to
score on it.
focus on
Um,
when we do meet.
My strategy for
So yeah,
physics
just
is
send me
to
as much
memorize
of that as
everything,
possible. Are you
like all
using
the
anything else
formulas.
besides
Okay.
AMC?
I want to say right away
No. Well,
that
I
physics
have U
is
World.
like so
Okay.
like okay. Biology
yeah,
is
we can
applied
use that,
chemistry. Chemistry is
and
applied physics.
yeah, just send me as much.
So
If you're
Okay.
as possible. Okay.
conceptual
Okay, I'll
understanding of
sort it
physics
through.
is sound, everything
Okay.
else comes naturally.
No, okay, thank you.
So like, all right, have a good one.
So
Okay?
the
memorization, because you probably read a bunch of posts from me saying you don't need to memorize that, and it's true. And there's like a video of me with one of my students talking about amino acids.
Yeah.
And she was saying like I have to memorize them all, and so we just went through every single like in the question bank or section one of the things, every single one that asked about amino acids, and basically we were able to answer them all. I mean, like all you need to know are, if you know the why, like everything else can be deduced. So if you just memorize all the amino acids, it's like the same thing with like memorizing vowels versus consonants.
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
the
but
way that I memorize the amino acids is I know the ones that are basic, I know the ones that are acidic. So if they're not the basic ones or acidic ones, they're all the other ones, you know?
amino
So,
acids not is the yeah.
oh no,
Yes.
I'm just using that as an example. So like so if you know like but yeah, once you send me stuff
Okay.
for physics and stuff. And then you said like genetics and cell bio.
Yeah. Because I didn't take those in college. So I was
Yeah,
very yeah, I mean, it's just anyway. And like I just have one last question that I was gonna
Sure.
ask. So for cars, I think when I was doing my practice questions for the AMC, like the actual full length ones, after the car section, I felt like I understood every passage, but then on my actual exam, I felt like I didn't understand any passages. So then I also feel like the actual one might be harder than the AMC ones, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
Well. So I mean, like everyone takes the AAMC ones, so they're going to design the actual test to be to at least look as different from the
Okay.
AAMC ones as possible.
Right.
So that is just on an actual test, it's for the first time ever. So you're going to feel a little bit more stress and fear and things like that.
Yeah.
But I would like you know speculate, or even more than speculate, I would say that if there is an AAMC test that you have not taken, and I switch a passage out with one from like a new test that you would take like on test day, that it wouldn't be different. It's just that once you're taking the test, like the pressure's on, and it's like it's a long test and you have to maintain, your attention span for like what, like 8 hours. Um, and especially if you're like concerned most with cars, like it's going to be a little bit it's going to be easier to kind of like freak out.
Yeah.
So I know you mentioned something about timing and stuff, and we can go over that as well. The way that I deal with timing with students is like at first we don't think about time, because at first it's building up the ability to be able to answer the question right.
Mm-hmm.
Then after that, we can step up the timing aspect of it. Because
Mm-hmm.
by that point, you at least know that you're capable of answering the right question and it's not just a matter of chance.
Right.
So yeah, we can do it like so we can do it like that.
Okay.
If that makes sense. But yeah, you're saying like, on the actual test, like you're saying you come away from it like feeling like that you didn't understand, like
Yeah, I didn't understand what the passage was saying. And also there's a few questions that were like totally like requires like multiple levels of logic that I was like, there's no way I can figure this out like right now.
yeah. Different passages have different levels of difficulty based on what each individual is comfortable with. So I also favor the approach of like skipping around, which takes practice. It's not for everyone, but since since you have a finite period of time, and since not every passage is equal in terms of difficulty, and since not every question is equal in terms of difficulty, it doesn't make sense to give every single question or passage the same amount of time.
Right.
So you don't want to, spend too much time on passage like whatever 4, because it's hard, and run out of time for passages that come on later that might be easier.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, so send me as much as possible. and I'll put it in a OneNote, and I'll share that with you, and yeah, we can go from there.
And should I, so in terms of payment, should I pay you in through, because I mean, PayPal's the only way I can think of right now.
Yeah,
That
yeah, you can do PayPal. I will send you the details for
Yeah.
that.
Right. Just send me like how you want me to like set who
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Okay. Now, yeah. So yeah, and then send me, as many questions or passages as possible.
Okay.
And you said 2 to 3 times a week. We could do that.
Yeah. I've never I haven't had a tutor for the last exam that I studied for because I just didn't have time to have a tutor. But now that I'm retaking it, I kind of already have the content somewhat down. So then I've some extra help. So yeah.
Yeah, of course. That's what I'm here for.
Cool.
All right.
Great.
So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll email you with, I mean, I'm very available, so I'll just email you with when I think we should meet again. Probably like in a few days, if that's okay with you.
Yeah. I just want you to, send me as much like material so I get as much of an idea as possible as to what to focus on when we
Okay.
do meet.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah,
Sounds
just send me as much of that as possible. Like, are you using anything else besides AAMC?
No. Well, I have UU World.
Okay. So yeah, we could use that, and yeah, just send me as much like
Okay.
that as possible. Okay.
Okay, I'll sort it through.
Okay.
Sounds good. Okay, thank you.
All right. Have a good one. Okay. Take care.